So one thing that we wanted to just impress upon you is this quote, and that planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now, right? And one thing we wanted to do is to share with you our own processes. You want to go start? Okay.
I came to planning a couple of years ago. I think it was just right after mid-pro when I realized, like, I can't sustain the way I'm working. Like, it's just not working. And so I signed up for the National Council for Faculty Development and Diversity's boot camp, which was a semester-long sort of weekly check-in. I did it over the summer of really, like, consciously thinking about, like, what's the work you want to do and how are you going to plan to get it done, with some supports around doing that. And then I had a group that came out of that. We were put into small groups throughout the summer, and that group continued meeting for a couple of years on our own. And so one of the things that I learned is to sort of start off with a semester plan, which is one of the things that we're going to facilitate here today. And then from there, thinking about the different categories and then getting really real about breaking down the steps of what is it that you want to accomplish. And then the other piece is the thing that I, like, every week that I don't do it, I'm like, oh, this week was not as productive this week. And why is that? It's because I didn't do my weekly planning. So you take your semester plan, and then every week you sort of work that plan. And then again, it's like having that check-in. Are there people that you can check in with and be accountable for? It doesn't work for me because for some reason, like, saying that there's a treat at the end just isn't one of the things that inspires me, but there's a lot of people that are like, yep, if you work this plan this week or you get these pages written or what have you, then you get a bowl of ice cream at the end of the week, or you get a massage at the end of the semester. So sometimes that really works for people too. And I know that one person in my group was like, yes, this is my treat. She was always like, what's the treat? And so those are some of the pieces. But that's the big thing that I'm continuing to find. And then I just keep trying to figure out, like, well, what are the tools that I need? So far, most of my work is based electronically. So I have my spreadsheet on my computer for my semester plan. And I'll show you, like, how that was facilitated and organized. And then from there, every week I look at that, and then I work it into my regular Google Calendar. So, Tryphenia is a great compliment because she does sort of something very different.
So my story is this. Treats don't work for me because I constantly treat myself every day. I don't wait to complete the task to treat. In fact, I choose to treat over the task. So that kind of motivation doesn't work for me. But what does is this feeling of having accomplished the thing that I said I wanted to do. And here's where we do overlap, because the tools for me are essential. Those of you who know me, and I know a few folks very closely in the room, know that I'm all about the calendar. I spend weeks thinking about the calendar for the upcoming year. And I'm trying different things. I'm always checking in with other people who look like they have it together. So what makes it work for you? You look like, you just seem calm and you seem like you feel good. What do you do to plan? How do you plan your week? How do you go into feeling so good? And it's a weird question, but what I have found is that people love to share with you their good ideas. So one approach that I use is, this is a 2-year calendar. And I know some people think, I would not dare carry this monstrosity. That's okay. But I know that what works for me is something that is large enough where I can have a day to doodle. I'm an ethnographer, so I'm always jotting. I jot my life, and I realize I have to do that, so that's something that works for me. It provides me with, this is a Whitney English day designer. It provides me with a monthly overview, a monthly to-do list. So when I start to think about the semester, I know how many months I have within the semester, how many tasks I'm trying to accomplish within that semester, what are my goals for that semester. And then this allows me to parse that out monthly, and then within each month, I'm able to parse that out weekly. And what I love about this is that I get an entire day, one page, one day. And that just excites me. And then I fill it with all kinds of stickers because, now that works They're not treats, but I like to open it up and it says, hello, beautiful. And I'm like, hi back to ya. And it works. But it gives me an hourly plan. I need the hour. I need to be able to look at the entire day and figure out how I'm going to spend the entire day, hour by hour. And one thing I'm really serious about is figuring in white space. We have a tendency, I don't know about you, but there are times when it's back to back to back to back meetings. And there are times when you just need to figure out, one, not just the amount of time that it takes you to get from schools back to your office, but the amount of time that it takes you to go to the meeting, recover from the meeting, factor in some personal time, even if it's 15 minutes or 10 minutes to use the restroom, whatever it is that you need to do to self-nurture, that you factor that in. If it means drawing that line down for a few more minutes, do that, to allot that. Because the other thing I've noticed is that people love to look at your calendar with you. And where there's a space, they will tell you. Outlook is a wonderful thing for some people. Because they say, I see you're available here. It doesn't work for me. But that kind of tool is essential for me. And so what I've been able to do in terms of thinking through my day, when I became an academic, I thought I would just spend, it would be like writing the dissertation. I'd be in the field, and I love the field, and that's essentially all I would do. But it didn't quite work out like that. There's so much more to our daily job, right, than the thing that brought us here, the love, the topic, whatever that motivation is. And so I have found this resource. I don't know if you've seen this book before. So it's writing your journal article in 12 weeks. Okay, so it's written to get work done. And we'll make this available for you to pass around. You can see mine is really used. I use it a lot. What I love in it is that Belcher provides a calendar for thinking through in 12 weeks the parts of an article and how to manage it weekly in that way. But the nugget that I want to share with you that I've adapted for my day is what she says, and it's written for academics, so she's written it with an academic in mind. And I now call that my daily 8, okay? Because she says we shouldn't be working 14, 15 hours a day. And I can look over a very long day and not be sure about what I accomplished, and that's really disheartening at times, and it's very tiring. So I've adapted her suggestions into what I call the daily 8. And if we follow this daily 8, her suggestions, we should not be doing more than about 8 hours a day. That gives us time for our families, it gives us time to walk the dog, you don't have to be upset with the trash can, whatever it is your thing. But it requires 1 hour for writing, 1 hour for reading, 1 hour for service, 1 hour for grading, 2 hours for teaching, prep, and 2 hours for class time. So essentially, 1 hour each for writing, reading, service, and grading, and then 2 hours each for preparation and for class time. Now, some of us, I'm in a graduate program, so I don't teach every day. So I get to modify what those 4 hours might look like. And the College of Ed, we just went to a 2-2 in, what, 2 years ago? 2 years ago. So we were on a 3-2, 3-3 load, regular load, for a long while. And then in our discussions around moving to a 2-2, we constantly talked about the 40-40-20. You all have heard that, our percentage of our time. Well, that breaks down to, if we have a work week that's 40% research, 40% teaching, and 20% service, then that means we're spending, should be, 16 hours a week on research. I could get so much done. 16 hours a week on teaching, including meeting with students, including prep, including teaching, all of it. And then 8 hours on service. Just 8. But what I realized when I juxtapose that 40-40-20 next to my daily 8, quite illuminating just how much time I was actually spending in the wrong places. So I became really cognizant of what the day looked like. And that was that reality check that we talked about earlier. Really getting real about where the day goes. And one way to get real about where the day goes is to actually see where it goes.
And that it's a process of continually refining and rethinking how you're doing stuff. So if you're spending a lot of hours on grading, for example, then how are you changing your assignments or changing your habits around grading to fit into the allotted hours? And so that's part of, again, the reality check of doing that. Or, you know, if you think like, today is the day I'm going to write my whole lit review, right? Well, what's the reality around actually breaking down what those pieces are and spreading it out over a week so that you do feel that sense of accomplishment at the end of it. So what we'd like to do is do a little bit of your own think time right before we go to lunch. And then lunch we'll have some more time to talk and talk about it. But basically, one of the things to think about is, as Tryphenia just laid out, like if your work in the academy is about research, teaching, service, and then there's also personal time. Like, what are your personal goals for this semester? And that was one of the things for me that I had to just reclaim. It's like, what? It's okay to have personal goals? But it is, like, this is a constant process of trying to figure out how to have that life-work balance. So you can actually live that 40-hour work week, not work all weekend, and figure out how to do that balance. So one of the things that I think is, I kind of joke that one of the reasons why I got my PhD was because I just wasn't cut out for a 9-to-5 job. The irony is, ever since I had a family, and like, I just try to work 9 to 5. But, and that doesn't always happen, but that's what I'm always kind of striving for, to have that balance. But then we also have the incredible privilege of having flexibility within that schedule, right? So that, you know, if you need to pick the kids up after school, but then where and how do you adjust your schedule to account for like the 2 hours you're not working 3 to 5, like where do you do it? Are you a night owl? Are you an early morning person? But to really think about like what's an 8-hour day look like? What does a 40-hour work week look like? And then how do you allot that in terms of your goals for research, teaching, service, and personal? So what we'd like for you to do now is just take some time and think about like, what are your goals for this semester? And what are your goals in terms of research, teaching, service, and then your own personal goals?
And as you brainstorm, be honest and not try to fill in all the columns. If that's a void for you, it's important that you see that right now. So it's okay if you're failing in one area. It's important to recognize that right now. And then you can see how to address that void. So somewhere on a paper back of something that we provided, just do a brainstorm. What are your research goals? What are your teaching goals? What are your service goals? Personal goals. And we'll take about 5 minutes to do that. So you've heard that ding twice now. The first thing we talked about was knowing yourself, and part of knowing yourself is knowing how long it takes you to do things. Now, that 5 minutes is clearly not enough. This 2 hours is clearly not enough. But what we're hoping it will be is motivation to continue to just plan it out, plan it the semester out before it plans you. And one technique that is also a strategy, I think, Kersti, you've used it as well in the past, but I use it regularly, and it's the Pomodoro Technique. And I don't know, okay, so I see a lot of nodding. And it really has been helpful in identifying how long, not so much how long things take, but how long I spend on things. And some things don't require an hour and several proofreads. They just don't. But that's been quite illuminating. Anyone unfamiliar with the Pomodoro Technique? So the Pomodoro, it is the tomato. The tomato has nothing to do with it. I think it's based on a college student whose mother, he was a procrastinator. Mother said, you know, you need a way to monitor your time. Sent him a Pomodoro tomato kitchen timer. And the idea behind it is to work in increments, like 30-minute increments. I think it's like recommended 25, but I go 30. And you work for 30 minutes, then it goes ding. Now the tick-tick is actually meant to work with, now they're expertise and experts in this area, I'm not one, but it's meant to work with the brain, somewhat like a metronome. So the tick-tick, and I've gotten so used to it that I don't even hear it, really. And I work for 30 minutes, the timer goes off, then I get a 5-minute break. It allows me to break up the time. So I know I'm doing laundry, I know I'm working, I'm doing laundry. That's that 5 minutes. I go and get coffee, do laundry, put another load, take out, start the dishwasher, whatever, then I'm back at work for another 30 minutes. I do 4 of those, so 1 30-minute is a tomato. I do 4 of those, and then following the 4th one, I get a 15-minute break, and that might be when I'm doing the bigger things. But it allows me to see how long it takes me to grade a paper, or to write a memo. And you'd be amazed after several tries of using this technique, just what you're able to get done in 30 minutes. And that whole thing that script that I've used, that some of you may be using, there's no reason for me to start this right now because I'll never get it done. I only have 30 minutes. What can I do in 30 minutes? Well, the Pomodoro Technique will show you what you can get done in 30 minutes. And you'll be amazed by the end of your day, and you get to see what you've done. You'll be amazed by it, and you get to see what you've done. But some things are just structured into your day, and Kersti's going to talk about that.
I was going to say, and there's also online tools around
Yes.
the Pomodoro Technique.
Lots.
Also, you start a clock on your computer, and it counts how many tomatoes you get done and things like that.
If the ticking doesn't work for you.
Right. So one of the other ways that I've learned to think about this work is, what's structured and what's less or unstructured in our time, right? And so usually teaching and service are fairly structured because you have to show up at a certain time, you know that you need to have certain things done for class, turn grading in at a certain time, that sort of thing. And then there's the more unstructured time, which is your research and your personal. And so we're just going to sort of prioritize that, but at the end of what we'd like for you to do is now think about the goals that you sort of started with. But what at the end of 16 weeks from now, what research and writing goals do you have and what personal goals do you have? And spend just a few minutes thinking about what those goals are. Maybe write out, by the end of this semester I want to blank, by the end of
Just a little nugget, one of my personal strategies is to go through the calendar. I write down the due date for this thing, or when I anticipate wanting to have it finished. And then I work 2 weeks back behind that as a reminder to say, this thing, you said you would have it done. And then I go 2 weeks behind that in my calendar to say, are you working on this? So those little reminders are just things that I do with myself while I'm eating the donut. Not if you did this, I get the donut, but while I'm eating it. So factor in that time. The same reminders that we might give our students, give yourself. Okay, so another tool I just want to introduce you to, you may know as the self-scholar. And if you have an affinity to the bullet journaling approach, and anyone unfamiliar with bullet journaling? Okay, bullet journaling is basically, these are blank pages, and it's just a journal, and instead of having a pre-designed calendar, it's one that you can design yourself. And you draw your own lines, you customize the calendar to meet your own needs. And it's quite interesting. I spent a lot of time researching Pinterest, and you get to see, I'm an anthropologist, got to do that, right? But you get a lot of really good ideas. It's amazing how people take the bullet journal approach and make it something worthwhile for them and something very useful. The Self-Scholar journal is like that. It's a bullet journal to the extent that you fill in the dates. This particular brand is customized to work for a semester. Actually, per my calculation, it's about 13 weeks, which is probably how we should be working, but it's about 13 weeks, and it's project-based. A friend of mine, when I went on sabbatical, which I was on sabbatical in the spring of 2018, gave this to me and said, use this to plan your sabbatical. And I was like, this is wonderful. I'm going to fill it up right now. I never made it. But because what I realized is that at that moment, having a separate journal just for my sabbatical didn't quite work for me. But this is project-based. It's project-based to the extent that you're able to plan every moment. You have 3 main targets. You have a place for your tasks and errands. You can do your meal planning, eat morning, afternoon, and evening, a space for you to write notes, and then something for which you are grateful. And the bullet journal idea is that you get to fill it in. And I'll just pass it around along with the book while you think about the goals that you wrote and the extent to which they are smart.
Okay. And so again, it's just another check-in of, like, are your goals specific? Are they measurable? Are they attractive? Is it something you actually want to do? Realistic, and then time framed. And the time frame is the thing that we're going to continue to keep whittling down, but more after lunch on that one. So,
Okay. Because a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? How real it is. Okay.
And you'll start to see as you look, like, I mean, probably many of you already have, but there's certain themes that continue to show up around what we know works to help productive people be productive. And that is this continually coming up with a big plan, then whittling that down. So from the semester to the month, to the week, to the day, to the hours.
To the hour.
Yeah. So.
And it's lunchtime. And one of the things that we want you to do is to think, pair, share, and eat. And as you eat, we want you to think about, and realistically and honestly, about what you do that currently works. There are some things that you do that do work for you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing them. And then they may not be working to the effect that you want them to, but think about what it is that you do when it's time to get things done. And we want you to share those best practices with each other as you eat and think about it. And as different ideas, because there may be some new ideas that come to mind, as they come to mind, we ask that you share them on this Post-it and then place them on one of the 3 parking lots that we have placed around the room. Because we hope that you leave with your trusty camera a picture of different ideas that you might want to just try. Right? Every semester is a new way of trying to plan. So that's what we'd like for you to do. As you think about these best practices and the things that you do that work and the things that you're going to hear that others do that work, also think about what your non-negotiables are. What are you not willing to do? Right? One thing I like to remind my students is that, I'm married, at least on the weekends. So that's a non-negotiable for me. No, we can't meet up, and spend all day Saturday. That doesn't work because, I'm married. And what are you prioritizing? So as you say yes to a lot of other things, you are then avoiding other things. And you have to be okay with that. It's not about, is there a sacrifice? It's about what you will sacrifice. And what are you willing to sacrifice? And what are you not willing to sacrifice?
Well, and then the other piece is what continues to not get on your calendar that actually maybe needs to be there. So what are you avoiding, and sort of thinking about that thing in the back of your mind as well. What's getting in the way?
And the unfortunate part, again, this kind of workshop is so good because it reminds you of some things that you already intuitively know but are not doing. And then there's never enough time, like once you get into it, you just kind of want to stay in it. So we recognize that. Just to underscore some of our own strategies, as you have been sharing, we talked about the Pomodoro Technique in assessing your time. For me, it's the Pomodoro Technique. Kersti uses it. Also, deciding what needs to get done. To-do list work this way. I have a colleague across the hall from me. I make jokes all the time because my to-do list is super elaborate, and then her to-do list, whatever she can fit on a Post-it note, that's it. That's what she refuses to go over, so we have good fun with that. But it's about knowing, again, what works for you, mapping it out in layered chunks, monthly, weekly, daily, and then I would add hourly planning. Taking inventory. And this idea of taking inventory is really also identifying that stuff that's already in progress. So you're going to write this paper and you probably have already started it in some way, but you've not fully appreciated the progress that you've made. And there's a suggestion here that someone says when they're working on projects, even if they only send an email, they've done something. And I just love that. And then making adjustments as needed, being flexible in the same way you are with others, being flexible with yourself. And so we're interested in hearing, we're interested in hearing what the kinds of things that you came up with. But this is about relying on resources, and today you are your best resource, right? We are each other's best resource. And in thinking about accountability, thinking about literature and calendaring tools.
And what I was going to say about, because Julia offered that she's going to send an email out, and you have the option of jumping in on an accountability group. And one of the things that I came to really appreciate about the accountability group that we had for a couple of years, and then people sort of moved into different spaces, so it disbanded just last semester. But for 2 years, we checked in with each other weekly on, are you working your weekly plan? And it was like to talk about like what I did with my accountability group. It's kind of like the conversations that you're having at your tables today. This is stuff that we don't really talk about, but it would surface like that this is part of the work. And so it's sort of surfacing this thing that everybody's doing, but we don't ever talk about it. And then we also got to know each other really well. It's like, you know, you're doing that thing again, which is my thing is that I always have one project too many going. And so I would send, you know, we'd share our weekly calendars, and my group would be like, there's no white space on your calendar, Tyson. Come on. Like, how do you do that? And is this realistic? And so really having people get to know you too. And that's an advantage of having an accountability group, to have these really odd conversations about like, how are you spending your time?
One thing I'll say about the accountability situation, for me, the group isn't necessarily functional if it's a bunch of people that I don't quite know. I love people, but I also am not necessarily have to be very vulnerable about things in a group right away. So it's kind of nice to have my good friend Yu Kyung-sun right next door, and I can run next door, whatever she's doing, I just interrupt and begin to tell her everything. But the idea we wanted to think about a supportive friend. It may not be a group for you. That's okay. It may just be a supportive friend. It may be a virtual group. I've heard of Twitter groups, chat. I don't tweet, but there are Twitter groups. And a writing group, and in other forms, other community situations that you be agentive in creating that situation that works for you. It may just be a monthly call to a person to say, can you just check in, just to see how things are going. And it really does matter.
Yeah, definitely. So the next step is just, again, giving you some time to sort of work this process. And on your table, there's 2 pieces of paper. If we need some spares,
There's a couple here.
But first, and I'm just going to give them both to you so you can decide like where you want to spend your time. Because we're also, since everybody committed to being here, we also want to give you some time to sort of start working this plan for yourselves.
Yeah.
But the first one is the semester strategic planning process, and we've already started this, but the first one is, what are your goals for research, writing, and personal aims? What do you want to accomplish this semester? And then writing down the big goals. So we've started that before lunch. So then the next thing is to start writing down, like, what are the tasks for each of those goals? So just take a minute and make a list of what are the tasks that need to happen to do that. And then work your plan week by week. So then starting saying, like, I'm going to do task A this week, I'm going to do task B next week, task C, et cetera, et cetera. And what's attached to that are 5 different examples of how different people have done this. And this is just me, like, saying, like, oh, you did that plan, what does it look like? Will you share it with me? And so I'm just sharing that with you now. of just different examples of how people have organized it. And what you'll see is like all 5 are a little bit different. And so I did that just to help you sort of stir your imagination about thinking about what works. And then the next piece of paper that is on your desk or on your is the weekly planning meeting. And I wrote this down because I just, like every week this is what I do.
This is a meeting with yourself.
And I need it. And it's a meeting with yourself, so you decide like when you're gonna do it, like Friday afternoon, sometimes people do it Sunday night, other people do it first thing Monday morning, but 30 minutes on your calendar for your weekly planning meeting. And then these are the things that you do. You set up your skeleton, you put in all the stuff you have to do. Then you do a brain dump, 10 minutes, all the stuff that you want to do. And that's where you're going back to your strategic plan of thinking about like, okay, what did I think I was going to do this week? Where am I in that? And that's part of your brain dump. And then the next part is putting actual things into your calendar. However you're going to do that. And then putting the first things that are most important to you, putting those in first. I know it sounds a little bit. And then also recognizing, and this is the hardest part for me, is like, oh, not everything's going to fit. And so then what do you do with that stuff that doesn't fit? What has to give somewhere? Or what gets moved to the next week? Or that sort of thing. Or what do you start taking off your plate too? Which has been a big exercise for me in the last year. I guess because the biggest thing that I've learned from all this work is like when you say yes over here, it means you're saying no to something else over here. And we don't always think about it that way, but it's like somebody's like, let's, like, this is a great idea, let's work on this idea and submit a grant and do all this. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then I realized like, oh, I said yes to that, and that means I'm not doing the work that I want to do, committed to doing over here. So then it's like just because there's not enough hours in the week. And so that's the thing. So yes over here means no over there. And what are you saying yes to, and what are you saying no to?
Oh yeah, that's that. And what I like to do is with each. So my plan looks a little different. I work it in this book, in my calendar, and as I work out each day, I start with writing in my daily 8, and like kind of coding that, and that way I can see that I'm actually reading. I don't have to wait for my journals to pile up to stay current in the literature, because if I'm following the daily 8, then in 8 hours I'm doing every task that's related to my job. I'm reading, I'm writing, I'm grading, so that doesn't pile up either. If it's reading a dissertation, or part of a dissertation, or part of a proposal, I get an hour in, So creating some type of coding system or tracking system that allows you to see just what each day looks like. That's what I do.